In those days, we are forced to go out with a mask. But truth to be said, in the United Arab Emirates, women wore a mask since very old times. But truth to be said, their mask was way more elegant. It was made of soft leather and decorated with gold color. And it was a tool for beauty, a beauty device. It was used to protect your face and sensitive skin from the burning sun, especially the nose and the cheeks, the most exposed part of the face. But also, let's face it, it gave to your eyes such a deep intensity. And the women of the desert used to go around with that when they were outside, just to make sure it's understood. This mask has no religious meaning. It's some fashion object, we can say, and it's still worn by some of the elderly women and proudly with some of the young ones as a sign of belonging to their tribe. And to celebrate the women with the mask, I would like to tell one of their most amazing stories. Once upon a time, in the village in the desert, there was a couple of siblings, a boy and a girl. They were orphans. Sadly, their parents had passed away when they were still young children, around 10 years old. But still, they managed to live together in their house, forming what looked as a little nice, happy family. And their secret was they cared for each other, they loved each other, they helped each other in any possible way. And noticing how good and kind they were, the entire village took in charge to look after them. And they grew up happily in their village. Now they were not poor, because their parents had left them in inheritance a very good house and a field. And they also owned some date palms to make a living. Now they grew up into a beautiful young woman and a handsome young man. So one day the girl went to the brother and she said, brother, I believe that you should now find a wife and start a family. I so much long to see you happy. But Shams, the brother, replied, Aza, my dear, my greatest wish is to see you be happy first and start a family. And so they kept on exchanging courtesy sentences until Aza, as women often do, took the initiative. And she went to visit the matchmaker of the village. And she asked the matchmaker to help her find a suitable bride for her brother. The matchmaker was pleased about the request, and she knew the family of Aza and Shams to be a very good and respected family in the village, and she had no doubt that many young women would be more than happy to join their life with Shams. And indeed, in a matter of a few days, the matchmaker found a very good-looking woman, well-renowned in the village too. Her name was Zubaida. And Zubaida, she was happy to join her fortune with Shams, and such a good family and a wealthy one. And Zubaida paid a visit to Aza, the sister, to discuss the detail of the marriage, as there was no mother for the two siblings. And so Aza was in charge. And Aza received her in her house and offered her Arabic coffee, and they drank and they discussed the details of the wedding, and Aza thought the woman was pleasant enough. And so the wedding took place, and there was a big feast, and the whole village was invited, as it is custom in this land, and the doors were always left open for any guests that would pop by. And after the big celebration, the bride changed. The moment she stepped inside the house of the two siblings, she started treating Asa very badly. She revealed to be a mean woman, shouting at her, ordering her around and treating her as a servant. She had no respect for her sister-in-law, and she was madly jealous for the love between the brother and the sister. Now Asa, on her side, she did not react at the beginning. She thought that her sister-in-law was new in the house, and indeed she needed to feel at ease. Maybe after a while they would become friends. But time went by, and Zubaida kept being more and more mean with her sister-in-law. So much so that Asa found herself crying in the evening in her bed, but still did not react, did not say anything to Zubaida. But Zubaida went over. She started gossiping about Asa in the village, and even to the ears of her own husband she started saying, "Oh, husband, methinks that your sister is not the good woman that she shows. I think that she goes around when she is unnoticed. I believe she is having some secret relationship. I think she will bring shame on this family. You should get rid of her and kill her." But Shams would not listen to such rumors. He knew his sister to be a virtuous and great and wise woman, and he would not buy any of that. This is why Zubaida figured an evil plan to get rid of her sister-in-law. She had heard, like many people in the United Arab Emirates, an old legend that said that there is a magic bird, very rare, that hardly anyone had seen with human eyes, and this bird lives right in the place where the desert dunes meet the rocks. That place at the border with Oman, where the landscape is breathtaking. In that very space, the magic bird lays its egg, and its eggs are red as coral, purple red. And now those eggs, if anyone eats them, they will make your belly swell and swell as a pregnant person. Zubaida decided she wanted those eggs for her sister-in-law. And so she went to the souk and she asked everyone about the magic eggs. But now everyone had heard of them, but nobody knew how to get them. But Zubaida went on for days and days, sounding the coins in her purse for whoever would find her the magic eggs, until one day a merchant waved at her, and he had a basket with something covered with a napkin. He told to Zubaida, "My lady, I have what you seek. The magic eggs from the magic birds. I have them here in my basket." Oh, Zubaida was so happy. She took the man aside and she said, show me, I don't believe you." But the man lifted the cloth, and indeed in the basket there were 4 red eggs, as red as coral or red as the sunset at night in the desert. Oh, Zubaida was so pleased, and she said, "How much are they? How much are they?" The man looked at her and said, "Oh, so difficult it was to get them that I would not separate from them with a light heart, but as you wish for them so much, 5,000 dirham. 5,000 dirham for 4 eggs? That was the crazy price." But Zubaida so much wanted the magic eggs that she paid without blinking. and she walked home with a basket. When she reached home, she boiled the eggs, and then she prepared a dish with hard-boiled red eggs and some fattoush salad and some Lebanese cheese. And when dinner time came, she served it to her sister-in-law. And Aza was so surprised and so pleased that eventually Zubaida was behaving kind with her, that she had no suspicion. She harbored no grudge, and she said, thank you, sister. Oh, how much I wish to share those incredible eggs with you. But Zubaida, she made a pretense not to be hungry, and she said, sister, I had such a big breakfast in the morning. I really am not hungry, but it would be such a pleasure to see you enjoying those eggs. And so Aza, completely free of any suspicion, she started peeling the marvelous eggs, and bite after bite she ate them all. And indeed, the flavor was rare and fine and delicate, and she ate them all. And then she went to bed. And in the days that came after, she had no suspicion, but Zubaida was looking at signs of pregnancy. And after almost a month, she was not deceived. Aza missed her chorus, and she started feeling something weird in her stomach. She felt sick in the mornings, and she couldn't tell why. She was certain she had no intercourse with any man, but still. Her belly started to swell in the following month. And now Zubaida, she ran to her husband and she said, my love, do you remember when I told you about your sister, that she's not a virtuous woman? Look at her now, look at her belly. She is bringing shame on our family. She is pregnant and we do not know who is the father. Shams dismissed once more these rumors. He did not want any of these gossips. But then suspicion went in his heart, and he started looking more carefully at his sister. And even below the white dress that is the custom here, he saw the swollen belly, and he was in a rage. He was deceived. He did not know what to do. He was so upset of failing his sister. He failed to protect her, and he was so upset to bring shame over his wife, who was, as far as he knew, innocent of everything. And so he couldn't sleep. He lost his peace night and day, until one day he took a decision, a very sad one, an extreme one. He would bring his sister to the desert and abandon her. And so he did. He brought his sister to the desert, and there he abandoned her. They went with camels, with Aza, suspecting nothing, just enjoying the ride. But when they arrived in a place amongst the dunes, very far from their village, almost one day travel far, Shams took his sister off the camel and he abandoned her. And Aza started running after him, shouting, brother, brother, why are you doing this to me? What is it? Is it a joke? Do you want to abandon me to die in the desert? Why? Why, brother? I never did anything wrong to you. But Shams, he looked at her from his camel and he said, sister, how could you break my heart like this? How could you have a relationship in secret with a stranger? Look at your belly, you're pregnant, and you didn't even have the courage to share with me. Who is the father of your child? Aza looked back at him in disbelief and dismay, but her brother just giddy up the camel, and he was off. Aza stayed there crying and in despair. She wetted the desert sand with her tears until, for the second time, she took her destiny in her hands. And she started looking around at the wild camels. She thought, where the camels will eat, so shall I. And she noticed the camel were eating out of a rare grass that looked thick from the outside. So she broke the leaves of that plant and she sucked the juice, and so she survived. And she ate some roots that again she saw the camels feeding from. And she survived. She survived several months, although her body became like a skeleton and her belly kept growing. Until one day all of a sudden she felt a pang in her lap, a terrible pang, and she screamed in pain, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. She screamed in pain, but the pain continued, and eventually she found a shelter against the rock, and there she stayed in labor for many hours until she delivered to this world not a baby, but 4. The 4 chicks were beautiful, and when Adza saw them, she was moved. They had beautiful, colorful feathers, and they were so tiny that she took them and she put them under her arm for protection. And in the days that followed, Adza, she nurtured the little chicks with tiny seeds and tiny insects she found in the desert. And the little chicks, they grew into beautiful birds. And each and every night, Adza sheltered them under her arms, as if she was indeed their own mother. And in the long desert night, she sang them. She sang to them in the beautiful Arabic language. She sang her own life in poetry. And the little birds, little by little, they learned her songs. And they started singing back to her. And eventually, they learned her language and they learned the story of her life. But then, one day, the 4 beautiful magic birds, they flew away. And when Adza saw them, flying away from her, roaring up in the sky above her head and then disappearing at the horizon, she cried in despair. She felt she had been abandoned one other time. But the little birds, they flew and flew over the dunes until they arrived in Adza's village. And there they sat on a branch and they started to sing. They sang their mother's song. They sang her story, how she had been wronged. And the people in the village started to gather around those incredible little creatures, and they started listening to their songs. Zubaida as well. She perched from her window, and when she heard the bird's song, she understood. She took a broom from the house and quickly she went out and started banging the broom on the birds to scatter them away. But the little birds, they just flew on a higher branch and kept singing and telling their story. But Zubaida went back in the house. She took some date seeds and she started throwing at them to make them fly away. But this is when some of the elders of the village, they stopped her and they asked, "Beautiful lady, why are you doing that? Why are you hitting those innocent birds? Don't you hear? They're telling us an interesting story. Maybe they carry the message from the merciful." And Adza, full of rage, she went back to her house and she locked herself in. Meanwhile, the elders of the village kept listening to the little birds, and one of them even brought a bag of rice to the birds so they can feed and keep singing. And slowly they understood the words of the song. Often they had asked to Shams and Zubaida the whereabouts of poor Adza, But every time they inquired after her, Shams had lowered his eyes and replied, "My sister went lost in the desert. I don't think she will ever come back. I don't know what happened to her." But now the elders, they never really believed to Shams' answer. And now, hearing the song, they wanted to know more. All of a sudden, though, the four little birds, when they saw the bag of rice, as it was predictable, they all flew towards it. But instead of eating the little white grains, they lifted the four corners of the bag and they took it high in the sky. And then they started flying over the dunes. But now the bag had a hole in the bottom, and some grains of rice started dropping on the earth, leaving a white trail on the golden sand. And the elders of the village, they went on their camels and they started following the trail. And they followed the birds. They followed over the dunes for an entire day until they came to the place where Azza dwelt. And they found the young woman, as skinny as a skeleton, but alive. And the little birds, they went close to their human mother, and with her they sang their song. And the elders of the village, when they heard the story, they started crying, and they were moved. They hugged Azza, and they took her back to the village. And once they were there, they summoned Shams and Zubaydah, together with the little birds and Azza, and they asked everyone to confess their version of the story. When they heard what truly happened, they ruled for Zubaydah to be kicked out of her house and abandoned in the desert to her destiny. But Azza, she begged for mercy for her evil sister-in-law, and she asked for a second chance to live all together as a family. And the elders agreed. And from that day on, Shams and Azza and Zubaydah lived together happily, with the four little birds perched on a branch outside their window. Until the day came when Azza also got married, and she went to live with her handsome husband, her handsome, kind, and wise husband. And the couple was happy ever after. And the little birds, they moved with them, and they kept singing their song to Azza's children for days to come. And now this is the end of the story from the wisdom of the desert. But listen to the old wise women. They used to say, whenever a young girl found herself pregnant and nobody could tell who was the father, oh, it's the fault of the magic bird.